things that that would really bother me to the core. And I think everybody would be this way. Being thrown into prison for not just expressing your point of view, but to have the facts to back it up. And it's something that is so dangerous if you don't pay attention to it. Going to prison for that? Boy, I don't know how I would handle that. Tommy Robinson, he is an independent journalist. He actually went to prison for reporting on sexual abuse in the United Kingdom. Now he's out. He's got a new series out in England involving a community that I guess is the epicenter of child rape. And he comes out of prison. They admit now that he was right. So I don't know, how does he get his time back on that? But now they have said, yeah, this child rape thing is really happening in the Muslim community. And he is putting together a series, and it's The Rape of Britain. And it is quite intense. It takes place in Telford, England. And Tommy Robinson is the man putting it together. Hello, Tommy. How are you?
I'm good, Glenn. Thank you. I'm good.
First of all, I have to ask you, how do you feel? How long did you spend time in prison?
For reporting outside of the court case, they took me off the streets, and within 2 hours, I literally went to work. I was outside court. As the men were walking in, I was giving the British public the lowdown on what was happening, how many men there were. There were 30 men on trial, how many children they'd raped. And I made sure to say that we were awaiting their verdict, they could be innocent. And I asked each of the men as they walked into court, how are you feeling about your verdict? And then they took me off the streets. They locked me up within 2 hours. They sentenced me to 13 months in prison. They actually let the men go home that day after court. And one of them has never faced justice. He fled straight to Pakistan. He packed his suitcase. So they locked me up as a risk. And they let the rapists go home. All of them were convicted. All 30 were convicted for the horrific torture and abuse of children. And then after 12 weeks, I was in solitary confinement for 12 weeks. There was a big, massive, there was outrage outside of in the UK and around the globe actually, and a Free Tommy movement was started. I was released from jail, and then because when it went to appeal, they found that everything the judge had done was unlawful. He hadn't even asked me if I was guilty or not guilty. He literally just locked me up. And then I was released from jail, and then they re-prosecuted me again on the same offence the next year. They put me back into Belmarsh, which is a maximum security prison, which houses some of the most worst criminals in Britain, full of terrorists, full of jihadists. They put me back in jail the year later on the same offence. They retried me again, and they put me back there for another 3 months. I served another 3 months. They sentenced me to 9 months.
We have something in America called double jeopardy. Just appreciating that law here in America, hearing your story. I tell you, Tommy, I watched you in front of the courthouse. I saw them when they arrested you, and I saw a couple of hours later you're going to maximum security prison, and I'm thinking, what the hell is even happening? It was absolutely outrageous. But kudos to you for now getting out and picking up even stronger. You're doing The Rape of Britain. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'd like to, because it's hard to talk about it in England. It's hard to talk about it here. I produced that documentary series, and not one single British journalist has mentioned it. We have exposed corruption to the top of the police. We've highlighted crimes. I spent 12 to 18 months with 10 different victims, and they're historic victims who have been raped. One of the victims raped by over 200 men. And I picked the town of Telford.
Oh my gosh.
And the reason why the reason I picked Telford, it's such an important town, is because Telford only has a 1.7% Muslim population. So in Telford, there have been over 1,000 victims. Now, the police inquiry identified over 200 local men. The independent inquiry identified 350. Our investigation identified 250. Now, when you do the demographics of that town and you get rid of the under 60s and the over 70s from the Muslim community and you get rid of the women, we're talking that 20 to 30% of the men in that town, of the Muslim men in that town, were involved in raping the children. Now, when we say raping the children, they're torturing them, they're abusing them, and this may sound unbelievable to a lot of American listeners. This has been going on for 40 years with full knowledge of government, full knowledge of police. If you ever want to put into words how powerful political correctness is, then they will sit by and allow the rape of a generation of your daughters in order not to be deemed racist. That is how powerful that tag and that wording has become in the UK. They will sacrifice children at the hands of the multicultural order. And that's what we've witnessed. And I don't know, Glenn, have you heard of Rotherham, the Rotherham report, where there's another famous city with these rapes, where we had 1,400 children raped?
I have not.
No, so the Rotherham scandal broke. There was 1,400 children. It's exactly the same story as Telford. The police knew, everyone, social services knew, they all let it happen. Yeah? Now, Rotherham only has a 3.7% Muslim population. That's a small population. The town I'm born in has a 50%. Okay, that's the town I grew up in. Now, Rotherham has a 3.7% Muslim population. There's not that many there. Yeah? But the only two towns that we've had the figures on are Rotherham and Telford. We've had 1,400 children in Rotherham and 1,000 in Telford. Now, recently, there was another scandal that broke in a town called Oldham. Now, this is when people need to understand what will happen, even in America, no matter where you are. In Oldham has a 31% Muslim population. Now, that means, because they're overrepresented in the council, so when they went for the independent inquiry, which is where all these headlines are coming from, the local council voted against it. When it went democratically, 90% of the Muslim councillors voted to block any investigation. 90%, supported by every single Labour politician. So it's the equivalent of the Democrats and the Republicans. Every Democrat politician, which over 50% of them were Muslim, every Democrat politician voted against an independent inquiry into the prostitution, the rape and the torture of a generation of children in Oldham. So you'll never, ever get the figures. Once there's a big enough community in certain cities, we will never know the true scale of the problem. I know the scale of the problem because I've investigated this for 10 years.
Well,
I know how.
We're having the same kind of problem here, a different scale, I think, than what you guys have. But it's just beginning. We had a rape of a 10-year-old girl. The president used it as a reason why you shouldn't get rid of abortion. But what he didn't say was, did they catch the rapist? How did this happen? It was an illegal alien. The border situation is out of control. 60% of the women and the girls that come across the border illegally are raped along the way. 60%. And wow. Where's the compassion? Where is the truth anywhere? Rape is off the charts. And a lot of it has to do with our border.
It's when you understand, which I've tried to warn America for a decade. You've had, when you have Islamic immigration, okay, which you're now seeing through your open border policy as well. It's a different culture. It's a different mindset. It's a different view of women. It's a totally different worldview. And every town and city, so we've had 64 of these explosive investigations in towns and cities across the UK. Muslims make up 4% of the British UK population. They are responsible for 90% of the grooming and rape convictions in gangs. 30% of the men convicted.
Oh my gosh.
30% are called Mohammed. You're not even allowed to ask why. You're not allowed to investigate why. When you try to look at why, you're a racist, you're a fascist, you're an extremist, you're an Islamophobe, you must be shut up and you must be silenced, you must be deplatformed, you must lose your work, you must lose your job. And the attack in our country against anyone speaking out, as I'm watching America, I'm seeing exactly the same with the Democrats, with the media. I'm seeing exactly the same policies, exactly the same. It's not centralised, it's decentralised. You have certain organisations and certain groups that will go after people, attack them, sue them. They'll use lawfare. They'll use anything. And all of that. And the reason why it's happening is because there's a one world view that they're trying to accomplish, and they need that open border. And all of the problems that come with it, they want to hide. Because they don't care. That's the reality. When you accept, they don't care if our daughters are being raped. They do not care. And this is immigration, and Islamic immigration hasn't slowed down in the UK. It's sped up. We're not seeing any success in any of this. The problem's getting worse. It's more dangerous for our daughters. When you understand it, in some of these court cases, Glenn, and this is again, it sounds so unbelievable. A young girl, a child, had her tongue nailed to a table. Another young girl, they got a hot iron rod with the letter M for Mohammed, and they heated the rod and they scalded her bum when she was 11 years old because she was the property of Mohammed. Now, in my investigation show, if you look at, I've done episode 1, 2, 3, and I'm about to release episode 4. What we show who the men are. We show how they operate. It's all family. Yeah? All of them are involved. Fathers are raping children with their sons. Brothers and cousins are involved together, raping young girls. Now, and it's not being addressed. The Telford, the case that you're all seeing on the news or you've recently seen, the police identified over 200 men involved. They prosecuted 12. Why? Why are you not... How can a man rape a child? In my investigation, I have only gone after the men when I have 3 girls that do not know each other who name the same man. And we are working on a shoestring budget, but yet we are still identifying, which is clear evidence of these men's crimes. We're identifying clear evidence and willing participants who would be willing to go to court. But the reason that this isn't happening is because the police purposely leave them in place. They leave the girls in dangerous and vulnerable positions. So the gangs who run the drugs, they run everything in the town. They control the town with an iron fist, and they're only 1.7% of that town. It's like a horror movie, and anybody who watches our films, you'll see it. It's not. I don't. Yeah.
You can go to. I don't mean to cut you off. I'd love to have you back, Tommy, to talk more about this, maybe in a longer format on a podcast. But you can see these episodes on urbanscoop.news. Urbanscoop.news is where you go to see this. This is happening all over the West, in country after country. It is happening. Our cultures are being destroyed, and we're the ones doing it. We're the ones that are allowing it to happen. And while it may not be happening at the scale that it is in the UK with the Muslim community, we have a real problem happening with rape of young women and girls that is happening because of the border. Thank you so much, Tommy. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Glenn. I'll be happy to come back anytime. Cheers.